Master Raymond, just take the card. You're a trillionaire. If you don't believe me, go to the bank and check the balance yourself. The password is your birthday. The elegant woman placed a sleek black card on the desk, her tone firm but polite. After being told to leave for the 5th time, she finally gave up trying to convince Raymond. With a deep bow, practically folding herself in half, she turned and walked out without another word. Got in a luxurious sports car. Raymond sighed and gave the card a quick glance before putting it into his pocket casually. Seriously? She expected him to believe he was the missing chairman of the country's biggest conglomerate? What a load of nonsense. Sure, there were parts of his past he couldn't remember, but there was no way he was some billionaire big shot. Shaking his head, he pushed the thought aside. Right now, he had more important things to worry about, like getting back to work at the restaurant. Today is his anniversary with his wife Dahlia. He had planned everything meticulously. Leave work early, pick up fresh ingredients, and cook her favorite meal. This year, he wanted to make it extra special, a reminder of their bond. Just as he began tidying up, the restaurant door opened. Dahlia stepped in first, her designer heels clicking sharply against the floor. Her hair was styled to perfection, her makeup immaculate, exuding the poise of a successful woman. Behind her, a tall man followed, his commanding presence filling the room instantly. Raymond straightened, a mixture of surprise and confusion flashing across his face. Dahlia? What are you doing here? Her gaze met his briefly, devoid of warmth, before she looked away. I won't take up much of your time, Raymond, she said coolly. I'm here because I want a divorce. The words landed like a blow, but Raymond kept his composure, though his hands clenched involuntarily. A divorce, he repeated, his voice low and steady. Why? What's happened? Before Dahlia could respond, the man beside her stepped forward with a smirk. I'll tell you what happened, he said, his tone dripping with disdain. Dahlia has finally realized she doesn't need to be stuck with a loser like you. Look at her. She's a CEO, a leader in the city's business elite. And you? He gestured around the modest restaurant, his expression filled with mockery. You're still here, serving tables and dreaming small. Honestly, it's embarrassing. Raymond's gaze shifted to the man, his eyes narrowing. And you are? Caleb Nathaniel, the man replied arrogantly. A man who actually understands her worth. Someone who can give her the life she deserves. Unlike you. Raymond's fists tightened, but he turned his focus back to Dahlia. Is that how you see me now? A burden? Dahlia's expression didn't falter. Raymond, it's not about being a burden. It's about reality. You're still stuck in the same place you were years ago, and I've moved on. We're no longer compatible. I need someone who matches my ambitions, not someone holding me back. Is that why he's here? Raymond asked, his voice edged with bitterness. You've already replaced me. I didn't replace you, Dahlia replied, her tone clipped and devoid of emotion. I outgrew you. Caleb chuckled darkly, stepping closer. You should take it as a compliment, Raymond. Dahlia's doing you a favor. She's offering you a clean break and compensation. It's more than you deserve. Dahlia placed the divorce papers and an envelope on the desk. These are the divorce papers. I've made all the arrangements. The envelope contains compensation. It's the least I can do after everything. Raymond stared at the envelope, his jaw tightening. Compensation, he echoed. That's what my years of support, sacrifice, and love amount to for you? A payoff. They'd been married for 3 years, and he had poured almost every ounce of his energy into their marriage. Every decision he made, every sacrifice was for her, for them. His career, his dreams, his time. They all took a back seat to her happiness. Dahlia had always been his priority, and now this was what he got. How ironic. Caleb laughed again, louder this time. What did you expect? A gold medal for being a dutiful husband? Face it, Raymond, you were never her equal. She's just trying to make it easier for you to step aside gracefully. Raymond's eyes burned with suppressed fury, but he didn't rise to the bait. He pushed the envelope back toward Dahlia, his voice sharp. I don't want your money. Don't be so dramatic, Dahlia snapped, her tone icy. I'm trying to be fair. Fair? Raymond said with a bitter laugh. You think throwing money at me makes this fair? Don't bother. I don't need your pity or your charity. Caleb smirked, wrapping an arm possessively around Dahlia's waist. Suit yourself. Maybe she'll donate it to someone more deserving. Raymond ignored him, his gaze fixed on Dahlia. You've made your decision. Let's not drag this out. Without waiting for her response, he picked up the pen. The weight of betrayal sat heavy in his chest, but he forced his hand to remain steady as he signed the papers. When he was done, he placed them back on the desk and looked at her one last time. I hope your new life is everything you want it to be, he said, his voice laced with quiet finality. Then he turned and walked away, leaving behind the woman who had once been his entire world. Staring at Raymond's back, Dahlia's lips parted slightly, surprise flashing across her face. She hadn't expected him to let go so easily, without argument or demands. However, for a moment, she felt a pang of loss, a strange emptiness she couldn't quite name. But she convinced herself that this was the right decision. Their lives were heading in different directions, and there was no point in holding on to a relationship that no longer worked. After leaving the restaurant, Raymond wandered on the street, not knowing where to go. Was money really that important? He clenched his fists and let out a bitter laugh. However, at that moment, that woman Sophia's words suddenly occurred to him. You're a trillionaire. If you don't believe me, check the balance. Trillionaire, he frowned. Though it seemed absurd to him, it wouldn't hurt if he went to check it out. After all, he had nothing else to lose. Without wasting any more time, he grabbed his jacket and placed the card in his pocket, heading towards Sky High Bank. Not long after he arrived, as he approached the glass doors, a sharp voice cut through the air. Well, if it isn't Raymond. A familiar voice sneered. He turned to see Dahlia's mother and younger sister stepping out from inside the bank and looking at him with disdain. You must have really hit rock bottom if you're here this quickly, her sister said with a smirk. What are you doing at a place like this? Looking for a loan? Raymond straightened, his jaw tightening. I'm here for my own reasons, he said evenly. Dahlia's mother let out a laugh, her perfectly manicured nails glinting in the sunlight as she gestured dismissively. Your reasons? Who are you trying to deceive? We know you came here to beg for a loan. Immediately Dahlia's sister chimed in, her tone dripping with mock sympathy. Honestly, we're just glad she's free of you now. You were always a burden. Raymond glanced at her, his hands tightening into fists at his sides. I'm here to conduct business at this bank. Please just get out of my way. Hearing what Raymond just said, Dahlia's mother let out a cold laugh, her disdain cutting through the air. Business? You? At this bank? She exchanged a mocking glance with her daughter before turning back to Raymond. Do you even know where you are? This is Sky High Bank, the largest bank in the country. People like you don't belong here. Her daughter chimed in, her tone dripping with arrogance. And do you even know what it takes to have an account here? Even a basic bronze card requires a deposit of at least 1 million. She leaned closer, her smirk widening. Owning a card here is a status symbol. But you, she laughed, shaking her head. You're nothing. You're not even qualified to be a cleaner in this place. At that moment, Dahlia's mother brought out her bronze card and showed it off to Raymond. You see this? Celeb helped us get it. He's much better than you. And I'm so glad that my daughter has chosen him over you. Raymond sneered, not caring about what card they had at all. He didn't want to waste any more time with them. Reached into his pocket and pulled out the black card Sophia had given him earlier, planning to get into the bank directly. However, Dahlia's mother and sister froze immediately as they saw the card in Raymond's hand. The supreme black card? Dahlia's mother exclaimed with shock. Raymond's grip tightened on the card as Dahlia's mother lunged forward, her hand reaching for his. That card doesn't belong to you, she snapped, her voice shrill. Immediately Raymond stepped back instinctively, keeping the card out of her reach. What are you doing? He asked, his tone calm. You can't have that card. You've stolen it, haven't you? It's not stolen, he said simply. Dahlia's mother scoffed, clearly didn't believe what he said. Immediately she lunged again, her movements frantic and uncoordinated. Raymond dodged her grasp, but in the struggle, she lost her balance. Her heel slipped against the floor, and she went down with a loud thud. Seeing what just happened, a gasp escaped her daughter's lips as she rushed to her mother's side. Mom, are you okay? Dahlia's mother winced, holding her ankle, her face twisted in pain. You! She pointed a trembling finger at Raymond, her voice filled with venom. You attacked me. Raymond blinked in disbelief. I didn't touch you. You fell on your own. But his words fell on deaf ears. Dahlia's sister had started barking orders to the nearby security guards. Arrest him. He just hurt my mother. The security guards, tall and imposing in their uniforms, approached quickly. At that moment one of them stepped forward, his expression neutral but authoritative. Sir, we've received a report of an assault. I need you to come with us. Raymond raised his hand slightly, showing him the card, his voice steady. I didn't assault anyone. I'm here to conduct business at this bank. Seeing the card in his hand, the security guard was shocked and stopped immediately. A supreme black card? His eyes widened, skepticism clear in his tone. Is this true? This was the highest level card in this bank, and this was the first time that he had ever seen it in person. But when looking at Raymond again, he hesitated. He didn't look like a man who could own such a card at all. At this moment, Dahlia's mother's laughter rang out, sharp and cutting through the air like a blade. Oh, come on, stop lying. The supreme black card belongs to the most powerful people in the world. Do you really think anyone's going to believe that's yours? She said, her voice dripping with scorn. Raymond's cold gaze locked onto hers. Believe it or not. It's none of your business, he said, his voice steady. Oh, please. Look at you. A waiter. A nobody. Do you even realize what holding a card like that implies? It screams fraud. Dahlia's sister snickered. And thank God Dahlia finally got rid of you. Imagine the embarrassment if she were still tied to you when this comes out. At that moment Dahlia's mother turned sharply, gesturing to the security guard again. This man is pretending to own a supreme black card. What are you waiting for? Arrest him before he causes more trouble. Immediately the guard approached again. Compared to Raymond, Dahlia's mother clearly looked much more like the client of this bank, and after hearing what she said about Raymond's job, he was quite sure that Raymond was just a swindler now. You loser, the guard sneered, his voice laced with mock authority. Hand over the card. I'm sure the police would love to know how you got it. Dahlia's sister crossed her arms, her smirk curling into something even more malicious. Honestly, it's pathetic. A fraud trying to pass himself off as someone important? How desperate can you get? At that moment the guard puffed out his chest, emboldened by Dahlia's mother and sister, and reached for the card. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be, he said smugly. Just hand it over and spare yourself the humiliation. I'm not handing anything over, Raymond said evenly, standing his ground. Then you're asking for trouble, you bastard. The guard shot back, grabbed Raymond's collar by force. Raymond's eyes darkened, and when he was about to resist, the heavy glass doors of the bank swung open with a sharp thud. Let go of your hand, you stupid thing. The sound silenced the scene immediately, and every head turned toward the entrance. The senior director of the bank, Melissa, went out, her commanding presence instantly filling the space. Her tailored suit hugged her frame perfectly, and her sharp heels clicked against the polished floor as she strode forward. Her gaze fixated on the card in Raymond's hand and her heart raced. The supreme black card. That wasn't just any black card. It was one of the legendary supreme black cards, an exclusive symbol of global power, wealth, and influence. Only 9 existed, entrusted to the world's most elite figures. To see one here, in the hands of a man who appeared so unassuming, was unthinkable. The security guard tried to explain, his tone dripping with caution. Ma'am, this man was trying to swindle. Shut up. Melissa's voice cut through the scene like a blade, sharp and icy. She marched toward the guard and slapped him hard, her eyes blazing with fury. The guard stumbled back, clutching his face. You're fired. Leave. Now. The guard paled, his mouth opening and closing as he tried to form a protest, but Melissa's sharp gaze left no room for argument. He stumbled away, humiliated. As the crowd watched in stunned silence, Dahlia's mother, however, refused to back down, believing there must be a mistake somewhere. You must be mistaken, she said, her voice rising with indignation. This man is a fraud. He has no business holding that card, let alone being here. Exactly, Dahlia's sister chimed in. It's an insult to your institution to let someone like him through the doors. Melissa turned to them, her lips pressing into a thin line. Enough, she said coldly, her voice freezing the room. You seem to misunderstand the gravity of your actions, Melissa continued, her tone sharp. Your baseless accusations and blatant disrespect are not only unfounded but deeply offensive. And I will not tolerate it. Dahlia's mother opened her mouth to speak, but Melissa cut her off, her voice unyielding. As of this moment, your membership with this bank is revoked. What? Dahlia's mother shrieked, her face flushing with outrage. You can't do that. Oh, I can, Melissa replied, her voice like ice. And I am. Furthermore, your qualifications to conduct any business with this bank are permanently canceled. You will no longer be welcome here. Dahlia's mother and sister stood in stunned silence, their faces pale. The weight of Melissa's words hit them like a hammer, shattering their arrogance into fragments. Revoked? Dahlia's mother stammered, her voice trembling. You can't do this, Dahlia's sister sputtered, her earlier sneer replaced by wide-eyed disbelief. Her voice cracked, but Melissa's icy glare stopped her from saying more. Melissa's lips curled into a faint, cold smile. I already have. The scene felt heavier as the gravity of their loss sank in. Membership at this bank wasn't just about convenience. It was a symbol of status, of power, and losing it was a blow that would echo across their social and business lives. For a family that thrived on connections and reputation, this was devastation. Madam, please, Dahlia's mother begged, her voice faltering, but Melissa's icy gaze froze her mid-sentence. Don't waste my time, Melissa said sharply, cutting her off. You've already wasted enough of it. Dahlia's sister glanced at her mother, panic flickering in her eyes. Her lips parted as if to say something, but the lump in her throat refused to let the words out. Knowing they had no choice, Dahlia's mother swallowed hard, her trembling hands smoothing the creases in her coat. We'll leave, she muttered, barely managing to keep her voice steady. Her daughter followed close behind, her face flushed with humiliation. As they exited the bank, Dahlia's mother's composure finally cracked. Her hands balled into fists, and her eyes blazed with anger. That bastard, she hissed. I swear, he's going to pay for this. Just wait. When the bank staff finds out what a fraud he is, they'll arrest him. And when they do, the consequences will be much worse than anything we've faced today. Her daughter nodded in agreement, her voice bitter. Let him have his moment. It won't last. Leaving the bank completely, Dahlia's mother wasted no time pulling out her phone. She must let her daughter know what her pathetic ex-husband had done. Her lips twisted into a feigned expression of pain as she called her daughter. Dahlia, she said, her voice trembling with false emotion. You won't believe what just happened. Raymond, that bastard, he hit me. Right here in the bank. What? Dahlia's voice carried a hint of disbelief. Yes, her mother continued, her tone rising. And that's not all. He's gotten himself involved with some theft and fraud gangs. He's carrying around a fake black card, pretending to be someone he's not. It's disgraceful. And because of him, the bank staff banned us from doing business there. Dahlia fell silent on the other end, the weight of her mother's accusations sinking in. I can't believe he would sink this low, her mother said, her voice cracking dramatically. Dahlia, you need to do something. I will, Dahlia said curtly, her voice clipped. I'll handle it. Minutes later, Raymond's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his jaw tightened when he saw Dahlia's name. However, he hesitated for a moment before answering. Raymond. Dahlia's voice came through, sharp and filled with accusation. What the hell are you doing? I just got a call from my mother. She told me everything. How you hit her, how you've joined some fraud ring, and how you're walking around with a fake black card trying to scam money from the bank. Do you have any idea what you're doing to yourself and my reputation? At that moment, Raymond's hand clenched around the phone. He closed his eyes, forcing himself to remain calm even as frustration boiled within him. He couldn't believe Dahlia would just listen to one-sided story, and believed her mother. Immediately, Raymond exhaled sharply, his patience wearing thin. Let me make this very clear, he said, his voice icy. I didn't hit your mother. I didn't join any fraud ring. With that, he ended the call, his grip on the phone tightening for a moment before he placed it back in his pocket. On the other end, Dahlia stared at her phone, her emotions swirling in a mix of shock, anger, and confusion. She had never heard Raymond speak to her so coldly before. However, she hadn't got much time to quarrel with him now. She needed to attend a charity event with Caleb soon. where she would be able to link up with the top individuals in the city, and it would be a great benefit to her business. Pushing the thoughts of Raymond aside, she forced a composed smile and walked out to join Caleb. Decided to confront Raymond and get to the bottom of everything later. At the same time, Melissa led Raymond through the bank's quiet corridors and entered a VIP room. She opened it with a slight bow, gesturing for him to step inside. The decor of the room was minimalist yet intimidatingly luxurious. At the center stood a reinforced ATM machine encased in a sleek security frame. With a swipe of her keycard, Melissa unlocked the system, gesturing for Raymond to step forward. "Please, Mr. Raymond," she said with practiced professionalism. "You may check your card here. This is a special terminal exclusive for our highest-level client." Raymond hesitated, glancing at her, then at the machine. Taking a deep breath, he slowly entered his birthday as the password. Then the screen blinked, processing for a moment before displaying the balance. $1,080, $998, $854, $600. His breath caught in his throat as he stared at the screen. He instinctively took a step back. This has to be a mistake. Melissa, standing beside him, leaned in slightly to confirm the balance for herself. Immediately her eyes widened, but she quickly masked her surprise with a composed smile. "There won't be any mistakes, Mr. Raymond." Raymond leaned back, his mind racing. That woman hadn't lied. He was indeed wealthy, so it meant that what she said about his past might be true. But why did he lose his memory? What happened to him? Was there any conspiracy behind this? His eyes narrowed. He would find these things out and take back everything that belonged to him. Then Raymond glanced at Melissa, gave her a brief nod. "Thanks for stepping in back there. I wasn't expecting things to get that out of hand." Melissa offered a polite smile, her tone light yet professional. "It was no big deal, Mr. Raymond. They were completely out of line, and the situation needed to be handled." Her eyes glinted with a mix of respect and curiosity. "Besides, ensuring our most important clients are treated with the dignity they deserve is part of my job." At that moment Melissa glanced at him, her voice becoming more conversational. "Actually, there's something I wanted to mention. This evening, the bank is hosting a charity dinner and auction. It's a relatively relaxed event, and I thought it might be a good opportunity for us to talk further in a less formal setting." Raymond raised an eyebrow, intrigued by her casual tone. "A charity dinner?" Melissa nodded. "Yes, and while the dinner itself is more about networking, the auction does feature a few rare items. Who knows? You might find something interesting." Raymond's interest in social events was minimal at best. He wanted to reject it when his eyes caught a glimpse of the open tablet in her hand. A list of auction items was displayed on the screen. Though he wasn't particularly curious, his eyes instinctively scanned the images. Then he saw it that a simple ring appeared among the images, its intricate patterns catching his attention immediately. Something about it tugged at him, a vague, indescribable pull that made his chest tighten. Immediately he froze, his gaze lingering on the image. Without being told, he could tell it wasn't just a piece of jewelry. He couldn't explain it, but something about it felt familiar, significant. He was sure that it must have something to do with his past life. Without any hesitation, he straightened, his decision made. "All right," he said finally, his voice steady. "I'll attend." 20 minutes later, a sleek car came to a halt in front of the entrance of the grand banquet hall. Raymond stepped out, straightening his clothes behind Raymond. Melissa remained in the car, her phone pressed to her ear as she handled an urgent call. However, Raymond barely had a chance to take in the elegant crowd milling about when a familiar voice called out, sharp and laced with disbelief. "Raymond." Hearing his name, he turned, his expression calm but cold as Dahlia stood a few steps away, her eyes wide with shock. Beside her was Caleb. "What are you doing here?" Dahlia asked, her voice cutting through the gentle hum of chatter around them. "Are you following me?" Immediately Raymond raised an eyebrow. "Why would I?" Dahlia's shock quickly turned to anger. "Don't lie. You have no reason to be here." Immediately Caleb stepped forward, his grin widening. "Ah, the infamous Raymond," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "Dahlia told me all about your little stunt with the black card. Fraud, wasn't it? Trying to pass yourself off as someone important." Raymond met his gaze with an impassive stare, refusing to rise to the bait. Dahlia's expression hardened. Raymond, how could you do something so reckless? All because of the divorce? Have you really fallen this far? I don't know what you're talking about, Raymond said flatly, not wanting to waste any more time on explaining himself to someone who wouldn't want to trust him. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Dahlia shot back, her voice rising. That black card. You stole it, didn't you? Or got involved in some scam to make a false one? And you even got the information that I would be attending this event, so you came here too, just to impress me and make me regret divorcing you, right? Do you have any idea how dangerous that is? You could ruin yourself, if you haven't already. Dahlia, Raymond said, frowning, his tone icy, don't flatter yourself. It has nothing to do with you. Then why are you here? She demanded, believing he was just lying. To attend the auction, Raymond replied simply, his voice steady. Immediately Dahlia's jaw tightened, disbelief flashing across her face. You're attending the auction? She repeated, as if the words themselves were ridiculous. Raymond, do you even hear yourself? You're making a fool of yourself. Just return the card and stop this before it gets worse. Raymond's gaze remained steady, his voice calm but firm. I don't need your concern, Dahlia. You've already made it clear where we stand. Seeing Raymond's attitude, Caleb smirked with disdain. You should leave, he said, his tone dripping with superiority. This place isn't for people like you. You'll only embarrass yourself further. And Dahlia, stop wasting your time on him. The last thing you need is to be associated with his mess. It's wise of you to have dumped him. No women would like to be with such trash. However, before Raymond could respond, a voice cut through the noise like a blade. Darling, sorry for keeping you waiting, the voice said, warm and intimate. Immediately the crowd turned in unison as Melissa stepped into view, her presence commanding instant attention. She was strikingly beautiful, her tailored dress highlighting her graceful figure. Her sharp eyes carried a quiet authority compared to her. Even Dahlia's polished appearance seemed dimmed, her usual poise suddenly overshadowed. Melissa's strides were confident, purposeful, and as she reached Raymond, she slipped her arm through his with effortless familiarity, and pressed a soft kiss to his cheek, her smile teasing but affectionate. Immediately Raymond's eyes widened for a moment, but he quickly understood her intent. She was trying to help him. He said nothing, choosing instead to play along. Though the unexpected closeness sent a faint ripple of unease through him, that moment Celeb's smirk froze, his confidence faltering as he processed what was happening. His eyes flickered between Melissa and Raymond, disbelief clouding his expression. Dahlia's lips parted, her voice barely above a whisper. Darling, she echoed, the word hanging in the air. Melissa turned to face her, her sharp eyes gleaming with an almost imperceptible smirk. Yes, darling, she said, her tone dripping with gentle mockery. Is there a problem? The crowd, initially silent, began whispering in shock and envy. Melissa's beauty and elegance were impossible to ignore, and the way she clung to Raymond with such intimacy shattered the image they had of him as just a nobody. She's stunning, another murmured, their eyes fixed on Melissa. How did he? Caleb, standing stiffly beside Dahlia, clenched his jaw. Dahlia's composure faltered, her fists clenching at her sides. Raymond, she began, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and something else, jealousy. So this is why you're here? You've moved on so quickly. Before Raymond could respond, Melissa tightened her grip on his arm and leaned closer, her head tilting toward his shoulder. We were planning to keep things quiet for a little while, she said smoothly, her eyes twinkling with feigned innocence. But I suppose there's no point in hiding it now. Dahlia's face flushed red, her jealousy barely concealed beneath her anger. Caleb stood rigid, his eyes narrowing as he watched Melissa lean into Raymond with an easy familiarity. The way she rested her hand lightly on his arm, the warmth in her tone when she addressed him, it all struck a nerve. He couldn't believe that right after being dumped by Dahlia, Raymond was already appearing close to a woman who was frankly breathtaking. However, he couldn't hide his anger anymore. Well, I will advise you to stay away from that man. Celeb pointed at Raymond. He's poor and useless, and I don't understand whatever he must have said to you. He's a liar and don't allow him to trick you. At that moment Melissa's jaw tightened. Do I look like someone who can be tricked in your eyes? Melissa Black, Senior Director of Sky High Bank? I'm smarter than that. Upon hearing what Melissa just said, Caleb's eyes widened in shock. Senior Director of Sky High Bank? He couldn't believe what he just heard. Sky High Bank is just the largest in the country and has businesses spanning all over the world. Though his family was one of the 4 major families in the city, they were still nothing compared to the Sky High Bank. That's why he only managed to get their platinum card. While as the senior director of the bank, Melissa even has the power to decide on major investments and partnerships in this city. And he couldn't believe such a woman was clinging on to that bastard. He glanced at Raymond, his eyes narrowing, then whispered to Dahlia, who was still in shock. "It all makes sense now," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. He was able to get away from the card thief and get his way here all because of her. Dahlia's hands tightened around her clutch, but she forced her face to remain calm, trying to ignore the fact that Raymond had moved on with someone who looked far more capable and connected than she had imagined. But so what? He was still trying to rely on women to make a living. Thinking of that, a hint of disappointment flashed in her eyes. She snorted, forcing herself to look away, and entered the hall with Caleb. As they entered the glittering hall, the atmosphere buzzed with excitement. Chandeliers cast a warm glow over the room, and the murmurs of influential voices filled the space. They knew the kind of connection Caleb and his family can control, and they would do anything to be in his favor for any kind of collaboration from them. Caleb, standing tall beside Dahlia, soaked it all in. His self-assured smirk widened as several guests approached them, eager to greet him. "Mr. Caleb." A middle-aged man in a tailored suit extended his hand with a wide smile. "It's an honor to see you here. Your family's reputation precedes you." Others quickly followed suit, their voices overlapping as they offered their praise. "Such a powerful couple you two make," a woman gushed, glancing at Dahlia with admiration. "It's inspiring to see 2 people with such status together." "Yes, a perfect match," another chimed in, nodding enthusiastically. Hearing their praise towards her, Dahlia managed a polite smile, but her thoughts were elsewhere. The compliments felt hollow. She glanced again toward Raymond, who was still standing quietly with the mysterious woman. Though he wasn't surrounded by fawning guests, there was an air of calm about him that seemed different. For a moment, she wondered if she had really misunderstood him. However, she immediately deleted the thought off her head. Caleb, meanwhile, basked in the attention. "Thank you," he said, his voice carrying a hint of arrogance. "We are indeed a great match. I'm lucky to have Dahlia by my side." Upon hearing what Caleb just said, the crowd murmured their agreement, and Caleb's grin widened. Just then another guest, an older gentleman with sharp eyes, stepped forward. "I heard there's something special at tonight's auction," he said, his voice laced with intrigue. "A rare vintage ring, part of Mr. Drake's private collection. You all know him, of course, the president of the city's largest business association." The mention of the ring drew a ripple of interest from the crowd. Someone gasped softly. "They say it's one of a kind," the man continued, glancing around. "I also heard the starting price alone is enough to make most people hesitate to even considering it. But for someone with Mr. Caleb's standing," he paused, smiling knowingly, "well, it might as well already be yours." Hearing what the man just said and his sweet words, Caleb chuckled, his pride swelling even further. "Like you just said, the ring is as good as mine," he declared, his voice loud enough to draw even more attention. "No one else here has what it takes to outbid me." "Speaking as if you have everything under control," Melissa scoffed, rolling her eyes with disdain. She'd had enough of his stupid arrogance. If Raymond wanted to, he could buy out this entire auction house without even trying. Her voice cut through the room like a blade, sharp and unwavering. Immediately the room fell into a stunned silence, the boldness of her statement hanging heavy in the air. Then, as if on cue, a ripple of laughter spread among the guests, their disbelief quickly morphing into scornful amusement. "By the auction house?" a woman snickered, covering her mouth as though the very idea was too absurd to say aloud. "Does she know who she's talking about? He's just a washed-up ex-husband." Another that knew Raymond as Dahlia X chimed in, shaking his head. "What kind of trick did he pull to get someone like her to back him up? Maybe she feels sorry for him," someone else added with a smirk. The room buzzed with ridicule, the mocking voices blending into a chorus of false amusement. Caleb leaned back, clearly enjoying the spectacle, his smirk widening as he met Raymond's calm gaze. Raymond, however, didn't flinch. Their words were meaningless noise, background static. He had no interest in acknowledging that. He took a slow step forward, his hands casually tucked into his pockets. "I'm not interested in buying the whole auction house," he said, his tone steady and unbothered. His gaze flicked toward the stage where the ring was displayed under bright lights. "But that ring..." He paused, letting his words sink in. "That's mine." Upon hearing what Raymond just said, Caleb's face darkened, his jaw tightening as he glared at Raymond. It was clearly a deliberate provocation to him. "Yours? Well, let's see how you can get it, loser." He smirked scornfully, already planning to teach him a harsh lesson later. His fingers tapped rhythmically against the armrest of his chair as resentment bubbled beneath his composed exterior. The other guests exchanged amused glances, their laughter muffled but unmistakable. They whispered among themselves, eager to witness the inevitable embarrassment they believed Raymond was walking into. "Such arrogance," one man muttered, shaking his head. "Let's see how he plans to follow through." "I know he's all talk," another woman said, leaning into her companion. "This will be entertaining." Not long after the auction finally began, the room fell into an anticipatory hush as the first items were introduced. Lavish jewelry, rare antiques, and expensive art pieces were displayed one after another, each met with enthusiastic bidding from the wealthy attendees. Caleb wasted no time flaunting his wealth, confidently raising his paddle for several extravagant pieces. When he won a diamond necklace, the crowd immediately erupted into polite applause. With a satisfied smirk, he turned and handed the necklace to Dahlia, his actions theatrical and calculated. "This suits you perfectly," he said loudly, making sure those around them heard. "A necklace as stunning as the woman wearing it." At that moment Dahlia offered a small, polite smile, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She couldn't stop her eyes from drifting toward Raymond. Unlike the others, Raymond hadn't raised his paddle once. He sat quietly at his table, seemingly indifferent to the auction entirely. While the crowd buzzed with excitement, he picked at the appetizers in front of him, occasionally leaning towards Melissa and exchanging a few quiet words. Whatever they were talking about, it seemed to amuse them both, as Sophia's soft laughter filled the small space between them. Dahlia shifted uncomfortably, her fingers tightening around the necklace Caleb had just given her at the same time. Caleb leaned back in his chair, a smug grin spreading across his face. Now he completely sure that Raymond was bluffing early. No money, no power, just a nobody riding on someone else's coattails. "I knew it," Caleb muttered under his breath, loud enough for Dahlia to hear. "He's just trying to use Melissa's status to make himself look important. Pathetic." At that moment the room quieted as the host stepped onto the stage, the energy shifting in an instant. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host began, his voice smooth and commanding, "we have now reached the highlight of tonight's auction, the most mysterious and coveted item of the evening." Immediately all eyes turned to the center of the stage as an attendant brought out a small, intricately carved box. The lid was lifted slowly, revealing the antique ring inside. At that moment the light from the chandelier above caught on its polished surface, illuminating the delicate design and the unmistakable aura of something ancient and feel priceless. The room buzzed with murmurs of admiration and intrigue, but none were as transfixed as Raymond. The moment he saw the ring, something deep within him stirred. It wasn't just admiration or desire, it was something far stronger, almost connected with him. Immediately his jaw tightened, and he leaned forward slightly, his eyes never leaving the ring. This was it. This was what he'd been waiting for. Sophia noticed the change in his expression and leaned in closer. "You want it, don't you?" she whispered, her tone calm but laced with meaning. Raymond nodded slightly, his resolve hardening. "Now the opening price of this ring is $30 million. The host announced the starting price, a figure so high it sent a ripple of shock through the room. Even among the wealthy attendees, the sum was daunting, and only a few raised their paddles with tentative offers. At that moment Caleb leaned back in his chair, the corner of his mouth curling into a satisfied smirk as he glanced at Raymond. The man hadn't moved or spoken since the auction for the ring began, and to Caleb that was confirmation enough. He's all talk, just as he thought. Immediately he straightened in his seat, raising his paddle high and confidently shouting out a bid that made heads turn. $40 million. The number echoed across the hall, silencing the faint murmurs. Immediately gasps rippled through the crowd, their admiration palpable. Such generosity! Someone whispered, their tone full of awe. No wonder he's part of the Blake family, another chimed in. Meanwhile, Caleb basked in the praise, already imagining the ring being placed in his hands. The room had gone silent. No one dared to outbid him, knowing it was just a waste of time. But just as the auctioneer prepared to call out the final sale, a calm, steady voice interrupted. 10 million. Immediately the room froze. All heads turned in unison toward Raymond, their expressions ranging from shock to disbelief. Did he just? Someone stammered, their voice trailing off. Is he serious? Another whispered, eyes wide with astonishment. Upon hearing what Raymond just said, Caleb leaned back in his chair, his smirk growing wider with each passing moment. His eyes darted between Raymond and Melissa, convinced that whatever boldness Raymond showed was because of her backing. There's no way he's doing this on his own, Caleb thought smugly. He probably doesn't even know the rules. Mr. Drake's auction was well known for its strict policy. The bidder and the payer had to be the same person. No one could swoop in and cover the cost. It was a rule that safeguarded the auction's exclusivity and ensured only those with real wealth could participate. Without being told, Caleb was certain Raymond hadn't bothered to understand these details. He's walking right into his own humiliation, and he can't wait to see how everyone is going to mock him for being so useless and stupid. However, seeing the flicker of determination in Raymond's eyes as he gazed at the ring, Caleb decided to teach him a lesson, confident he could crush him easily. He sneered, raised his paddle, adding a modest increase to the bid. $10.1 million. Seeing Caleb bidding again, the crowd hummed in approval, their attention now fully locked on the battle for the ring. They all thought Raymond would give up now, that his recent show was just for formality. However, Raymond didn't hesitate. With the same calm expression, he lifted his paddle and increased the bid again, drawing more gasps from the crowd. $11 million. Caleb's smirk deepened. The fish bit the bait. He raised his paddle again. $11.1 million. Meanwhile, the murmurs among the crowd started growing louder. They couldn't believe someone so useless as Raymond would be the one challenging Caleb of all people. He has no idea what he's doing, someone whispered. Does he even know the pair has to be the bidder? He's making a fool of himself. Look at him, so calm. He's bluffing for sure. The noise of judgment filled the room, but Raymond remained detached, his focus solely on the auctioneer. At that moment, Melissa, sitting beside him, glanced around at the skeptical faces. Her smile was faint but steady, her posture relaxed. She didn't need to say anything to reassure Raymond. She knew how much he's worth. Without wasting any more time, Raymond raised his paddle again. $12 million. Immediately the room fell silent again for a moment, the crowd stunned. He's still bidding, one person whispered, their disbelief clear. What's he thinking? He doesn't have that kind of money. He's going to regret this, another scoffed. Seeing Raymond's attitude, Dahlia couldn't hold back any longer. The tension in the room was palpable, and Raymond's unwavering confidence of something he can't afford unnerved her. She leaned forward, her voice low but sharp enough for him to hear. Raymond, stop this. Don't be reckless. You don't know what you're doing. However, Raymond didn't respond immediately, his calm eyes fixed on the auctioneer as the current bid hovered in the air. Her frustration grew. Do you even understand where you are? She hissed. That black card you're holding, it's fake. It won't work here. You're going to make a fool of yourself, and the consequences won't just be embarrassment. Do you know what happens to people who cause trouble at Mr. Drake's auctions? At that moment, Raymond finally turned his head slightly, his expression unbothered. I don't need you to worry about me, he said evenly, his voice steady and composed. Immediately Dahlia's breath hitched at his calmness. She couldn't understand why Raymond looked so certain. At that moment, Caleb's smirk widened as he observed the exchange. He leaned back in his chair, his arrogance practically radiating from him. See that? He muttered to the guest next to him, gesturing toward Dahlia and Raymond. Even his ex-wife knows he's out of his depth. This will be fun. Raising his paddle, Caleb increased his bid by another modest amount, his tone dripping with mockery. $15 million. Let's see if he still dares to play along, he said loud enough for the crowd to hear, earning a few chuckles of agreement. At that moment, sitting beside Raymond, Melissa folded her arms, her lips curving into a faint smirk. Let him dig his own hole, she thought, her eyes glinting with amusement. She had seen enough to know where this was headed. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder as all eyes shifted to Raymond, expecting him to fold under the pressure. Is he going to back down now? Someone whispered. He's been bluffing the whole time. Watch him try to weasel his way out. Raymond's lips curved into a sneer. He was tired of this game. Without a moment's hesitation, he raised his paddle again. $50 million. The moment Raymond made his final bid, the room erupted into chaos. Guests whispered furiously among themselves, their voices a mixture of shock and disbelief. Did he really just bid that much? One man murmured wide-eyed. And to think he doesn't even look, move, or disturb, for someone who doesn't have anything to brag about. At that moment Caleb cheek raised, almost covering his eyes, knowing he had gotten Raymond where he wanted him. Without wasting any more time he stood up, barely containing his glee. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice filled with exaggerated politeness. I think we can all agree that $150 million is no small amount. To avoid any unnecessary confusion or delays, why don't we verify if Mr. Raymond actually has the means to back up his bid?